You get an easy job, huh? Again, welcome to Warsaw. Welcome to our Freedom Lunch. That's something that was created for events like this one. I hope to introduce here Professor Balcerowicz, but he couldn't come here for some health reasons. We wish him all the best. I think that the question he will post, and quite often he said, that's what makes some nations, some people prosperous and happy, and others are and others are always in misery. And that's a question a lot of economists, politicians, experts will be asking, writing a lot of books. But ever so often, this coming alive to us when we now ask ourselves, what would make Ukraine happy, prosperous, and adventurous in the future? And I'm sure those of you who are from Ukraine are already know and saw all those experts lining up with advice, recipes, how to make the best of your life, because they all know they come from the West, even though quite few of them come from the countries that lost their vitality from the past, economic prosperity. They are under the burden of a lot of regulations. They are struggling with a lot of redistribution schemes, and their economies are not where they used to be nowadays, but they still are happy to come up with some advice. So one advice I would have, also remembering the time when Poland had been going through transformation, watch out for those overflowing advisors, experts, and with all their recipes. There's one lesson they actually could learn from Ukraine, and we all could. It is something you know how to set up your dreams and actually how to strive for them. And whatever happens, never stop and fight for them. That's something we lost in the West quite often, that we don't have this stamina to fight for what we once dreamed. And this is something Ukraine actually could give to us. So just I won't make it very short to start this debate, and just to remind you what once when Gandhi been asked, what do you think about Western civilization? He says, it would be nice to have it. So this is a concept sometimes that they're trying to sell you, but it's not that you don't know where to go. So obviously it's good to get some administrative skills, economic skills, ideas, concept, and listen. But values, that's something you already have, and this is most important in your transition. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and I really hope for a very lively debate. Thank you.
Does it work? Okay. Okay, so the conference is open. I invite Natalia, Melnyk, who is a co-organizer of this event, along with Austrian Economic Center. She is from Free Market Bernokize Center in Kiev. And she's going to proceed with all the rest.
Hello, everyone. As a short intro, so it's Free Market Roadshow Kiev/Warsaw for the second year in a row, due to, you know why. But we're hoping that next year we will be able to be back in Kiev. Today, with the program of this event, when we're planning it with Sebastian, we wanted to put Ukraine in the context. So Ukraine in the context of the region, Ukraine in the context of the EU, our aspirations, our issues, our common goals, and some differences that we do have. We will be mentioning them during our discussion, of course, the latest developments regarding the not-so-free trade with some of our partners. But these difficult conversations should not be avoided, right? And I think this is probably the perfect event for us to be talking about these things. And of course, we will be talking about Ukraine's road to the EU and why we're headed there. We will have a very busy panel, actually. Tomasz, I will ask you to join us. And now, very busy and a very international panel. Weronika Movchan, who is the research director at the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting. We also have, or are going to have, Olena Cybuch with us, the counselor to the Ukrainian embassy to Poland. Let me take it. Okay. Then our next speaker is Łukasz Wojdyga, the Deputy Director at Center for Strategic Studies at Warsaw Enterprise Institute. Our wonderful host and co-organizer here. Then Cezary Bachański, the entrepreneur and researcher at the Warsaw Enterprise Institute. And then, last but not least, George Rîpă, who is the international political consultant from Romania. So here are our wonderful speakers. And there were a million things we wanted to discuss during this panel, but because we are, for some reason, quite constricted with our timeline, but thanks to you, we have additional, I think, 20 minutes for our discussion, so we will make use of that extra time. Ukraine's accession to the EU, is it a dream? Is it a choice? Or is it a necessity? Let's start with you, Olena, please.
First of all, thank you very much, and thank you, Tomasz, for your kind words. Closer, okay. Do you hear me? No, okay. Wanted to thank you, Tomasz, for your kind words about Ukrainians and Ukraine. And thank you very much for inviting the embassy to this event. A very tricky question. I would say predictable answer, but at the same time not predictable. I would say that Ukraine's accession to the EU is both the choice and the necessity. Of course, any European country has a sovereign choice whether to join the EU or not, and that was a sovereign decision of Ukraine as well to join it. But I think that this was also a natural decision because historically Ukraine has always been a part of Western civilization, of the Western values. But now, in terms of this heinous aggression, I think that this choice has transformed into a necessity, it's a must for Ukraine to become a member of the EU. Why? Just to finally anchor us as an integral part of the West. And this will be also one of the victories over Russia, over its imperialism. I think that this is also a choice of every member state, or European member state, whether to have Ukraine on board or not. But also, due to this war, this choice was transformed into the necessity, because should the EU have any ambiguity as regards the membership of Ukraine, or should there be any protraction in the accession process, all this will play in the interest of Russia, and all this will just encourage further Russian aggression. And surely it's not in the interests of anyone, of Europe. And to add on the positive note, I think that we all should recognize that every wave of enlargement only strengthened the EU. All enlargements brought good economic benefits, and even to those countries which were initially opposed to the enlargement. So I'm sure and I strongly believe that this will be the case with Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Elena. Weronika, are we ready to become part of the EU? The easiest question there is in the world. Are we ready for it?
This is the greatest question. It depends whom you ask. Basically, if you ask people on the street, according to the polls, I think yes. People are ready, and it's not only the choice or necessity, it's also a dream for many of them. But if you ask the European Commission, they say no. Although they're very supportive, but if you read reports and you look at the legislation and etc., you understand that it's not the full readiness. It's still a long way to go. If you ask some of the EU member states,
which we will do.
Yes, but probably not all of them are here. Most of them are not here, I would say. They will say that might be sometime, definitely not now, and this is a very, 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 very long process. And even being now in Warsaw and looking at our borders with all these import bans and etc., you understand that it's not only Ukraine's readiness to be discussed. It's basically also the readiness of the EU market to accept Ukraine. Because, and it's one of the criteria that's not very much discussed. We all know the political criteria, we all know economic criteria, know like from the Copenhagen criteria, fundamental market economy and ability to the states union market pressure. But that also there is a line there that the European Union countries have to be ready to withstand a new market pressure. And that is the question that we are not fully ready to grasp yet. And even as I am asked as an expert, not as a person, not as a, definitely not a representative of any of EU country or official, I would say that Ukraine is not fully ready, but it is much more ready than many people would expect. Yes, it's a lot of legislation to be adopted, although some key principle legislation is already there. Yes, we still have to do the largest and most difficult part is judicial reform, because we have laws, but if we don't have judiciary implementing them, it's meaningless. But looking on the aspiration, looking on the pressures, I would say that Ukraine will be ready soon.
How soon?
That's a great question. My optimism...
Because we want it like yesterday.
Yes, I would say that I would be happy if Ukraine become a member by 2030. It's not, we might be ready earlier, but on the other hand, we have... I did not expect, for example, these bans. I expected difficulties, but I did not expect these harsh movements. And that a bit ruins my understanding, will we have any opening of accession talks this year? And if we have no accession talks like it was in Balkans, then whatever legislation we adopt, whatever market pressures we are ready to withstand, and I'm sure we are ready to withstand them. But if it's no consensus on this side of the border,
I think that at the end of this panel, we will have a little betting pool going on as to when and if Ukraine joins the EU. And then when that finally happens, or we get a no, we will determine who the winner is. And now we will go into more detail as to what needs to be done by us as Ukrainians. But our EU members, what do you think? Is Ukraine ready? When it will be ready? And is, like Weronika said, maybe a more important question, is the EU ready to accept Ukraine? George?
First of all, I think that Ukraine must understand that the Euro-Atlantic organizations, both EU and NATO, are first of all organizations based on values, on common values. And that's why I'm very happy that there are friends of us here that are coming from United States of America. Our civilization has many enemies. And okay, today we have Russia, but very soon we'll realize that the greatest enemy is China. And I think that we must stand together, and I think Ukraine's place is along other nations in Europe and in the North, in the Euro-Atlantic world to defend our freedoms. Today, if you look at how the country looks in Ukraine, how the politics is there, how the economy, you will say that definitely Ukraine is not ready. But that's not a problem, because 30 years ago, Romania was not ready to join the European Union, and today Romania, where I come from, is a European Union country, and things are going better every day. So for our friends from Ukraine, I told him, first of all, win this war.
Just a tiny little thing to do.
Because we are standing with you, and the Polish people are standing with you, the Romanian people are standing with you, and all the people from the Euro-Atlantic societies are standing with you. So you must win the war. You have to promise that here. Then build your country, build democratic institutions, not because the European Union is asking you to do that. Do it because it's good for you. Make all the reforms that you can do. Liberalize everything. Build a strong and independent judicial system. Not because the Commission is asking you to do that, but because it's good for the Ukrainian people. Build independent media that does not get money from Brussels or from the government or from different tycoons. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Because 30 years ago, Romania was in the same situation as Ukraine today, except the war.
Except the war.
Of course. Do everything now, because after you will join the European Union, most of the politicians will try to reverse these reforms. Will try to reverse the reforms in the judicial system. They will try to reverse the reforms in the economic sector. In Romania, there are, I think, more than 800 state companies that are used to that are used by the politicians. I don't think in Poland, I think there are less than 200. I'm not saying that it's bad to have state companies, but those companies must have a very low percent in the economy. And so on. So build your country, first of all. We are with you, and we are respecting you. I don't know if it's 2030 and 2045. It doesn't matter, because what matters is to make the reforms, because those reforms will guarantee a strong economy and a strong level of living for the people, no matter what, if you're a member of the European Union or not. But most of them, but above all, before joining the European Union, I think it is most important for you to join NATO.
Unfortunately, we don't have relevant NATO representatives, decision makers here with us. Maybe next year we will add them to the panel. So our Polish friends, what do you say about EU's and Ukraine's readiness?
Well, first of all, European Union is not a heaven. It's not something that you have to, you are obliged to fill up all the requirements, because if you look at the European Union, if you look at Greece, Italy, Portugal, Poland, we are definitely not filling up all the requirements, including including France when it comes to the deficit. So we are not saints. So it's not like you are coming to the club of saints and you are joining some club. We are all adjusting. And it's very important for European Union to understand that with enlargement, European Union have to change. You mentioned just before that the difficult question. One of them is to be agriculture. European Union, with the current policy about common agriculture policy, won't be able to adjust to Ukraine joining Europe. So we have to change that. It's old, rusty, it's a faulty system we have in European Union. It's definitely not a heaven. We have to change that. A lot of things would have to change. And then I don't know how Ukrainians feel. I just can hear from people what they think about European Union. But I think for countries like ours, like Poland, it is almost as crucial as for Ukraine to join European Union as for Ukraine to join European Union. We are now in 200-year paradigm, living this different contractual scheme between Germany and Russia, that everything in between, it's ruled either by both or by Germany or Russia in between. So for Poland and Central European countries, all the way from Estonia down to probably Greece, through Romania as well, it is crucial to be more decisive, more to say in Europe. And it is very important, I'm going to say, we won't have our say in Europe without Ukraine. So if Poland wants to be more treated more seriously in European Union, be more equal level player with Germany and France, we need to absorb Ukraine to European Union. So this is as important to Ukraine as in Poland. So we can discuss whether Ukraine is ready or not, but make sure that this will never end. Brussels will always find things that you are not ready. Like today, Greece wouldn't be able to access European Union. Probably Poland wouldn't be able, a lot of those countries, but we are in, and we are changing the system. And European Union, Europe is lagging in competition, innovative systems, economy, prosperity. All we are producing is regulations and burdens for companies right now. So we need this change. We need some fresh blood within the European Union. So if anybody tells you that we will see whether Ukraine is ready, I can tell you we are ready for Ukraine, because this is crucial for countries like ours, like Poland.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to add something?
Okay, well, thank you very much. So, Tomek, you have still the part of my show.
My also.
No, but I can tell that from the geopolitical point of view, it's Ukraine should strive to become deeply rooted in European structures as possible. So there's no doubt. For now, you have a choice, or to be the part of Russia or to be under Russia. So that's no other choice. But from the point of view of economic interests of your country, I think the decision should be well thought and well calculated. If it's really good idea to become part of European Union, as we have European Union right now, as a structures and a policy behind the European Union. It's also important to mention that only now Poland, after 18 years of being the member of European Union, we only now we understand how it's all about the European Union, how all this mechanism and everything it's going on. So we are not prepared in 2004 to be the member of European Union as Romania. We completely didn't know how it works, how to create the alliances, which part is important, which is not important. You know, the Polish people as a Slavic people, we are very emotional. So for us, being the member of European Union is let's say, the reward for our suffering during the war, for our suffering during the communist time, and we did not consider this as a game of interest between different countries, as it really is. So my advice for Ukraine for now, as we look for examples of Turkey, as we look for example of Balkan states, which are waiting many years. Please remember, Poland was a candidate to European Union for 12 years. Yeah, from 1992, we were accepted candidate, and we became the member finally in 2004. So it was 12 years. So right now, it's for you, if you really want to be the member of this institution, these structures, you have this great opportunity to learn how it works. So the next time, I am not so optimistic with this 2030, of course, but it's time to be well prepared to calculate it, to prepare the profit-loss statement, and know if you really want from economical point of view. As I mentioned, from geopolitical point of view, I have no doubt. But from economical point of view, you should have to calculate it and be prepared for a very tough negotiation.
Okay, so 2030, you say it's a very optimistic scenario, yeah? So which one is yours? Realistic or pessimistic?
Well, frankly speaking, I think it depends on a decision of the most powerful countries in Europe, that's in Germany and France. Because I think in Poland you have a fully support. I think in Romania you also have a full support. But from the other hand, when we look for this grain crisis we had and all this agriculture issue, it's not so easy. But I think we'll find the good solution. But the final, let's say, political decision will be taken in Paris and in Berlin, I think. And maybe with some support from Washington, D.C.
Cezary?
Okay, so by political reasons, of course, Ukraine should be in European Union. Is Ukraine ready to join the European Union? For sure, no. And also what is not talking about that the European Union, as Tomek mentioned before, is not heaven. This is not the same European Union like 20 or 30 years ago. If you join the European Union, this is kind of the business contract. This is like a contract. If you look at the past, for example, the example of Poland, we gave cheap laborers. We gave people to work all around the European Union. Demography is another problem, because if you will have totally free movement of people, who will work in your country? It will be the same exactly problem like is now in Romania, when there is no workers and they must have immigrants to work. The same is now in Poland. So, as I mentioned before, European Union is not a heaven, and you have to consider 5 times about this.
Well, luckily for you, you have millions of Ukrainians working in your economy.
That's fact. And we are very thankful as an entrepreneurs that Ukrainian people work in Poland, because it helps us so much. But you have very bad choice, to be honest. You have choice to be part of Russia, or dependent on Russia, or be dependent on European Union. To be honest, I prefer, if I'm in your shoes, to be part of European Union. In last year, only 9% of requirements to accession to you fulfill only 9% more to make accession to European Union. So it is long process. This is not 2 years. This is not 5 years. It's a very long process. So by economic reasons, for sure, you are not ready. But for political reasons, you should be in part of the European Union. And I think this is in the business of all European Union members.
I would like to add that it is not situation today in the European Union as it was 20 or 25 years ago. 20 or 25 years ago, we talk about the liberalization, we talk about the free market economy, and now we can see that France is nationalizing its energy sector. And also, unfortunately, we must learn new pronouns. That wasn't the case 30 years ago. But even so...
She, her.
They, them. But I think it is very important for the European Union to have Ukraine. And it is very important for Poland, and it is very important for Romania, because Ukraine will bring a new kind of realism to the table. Because today, the Ukrainians are fighting and they are dying for the old fashionable values, for the old conservative values. They are dying for God, for country, and for their family. And perhaps we need in the European Union to be reminded that those are the values that founded the European Union more than 60 or 70 years ago.
Before we go to Olena and Weronika, I would like to point out, because already two speakers mentioned the choice that we have, either be under Russia, right, or under the EU, or whatever, but there is a third choice that we are actually currently experiencing, is that if you don't want to be with Russia, you will be destroyed by Russia. So that's also an option, and that's something for our partners to consider, because Ukraine is running out of people. And every single day that the war is going on, we are not, somehow growing these universal soldiers that will go and defend freedom, or will go and defend all of these wonderful old values, right? And it's very easy to say you need to win the war, and then you need to help us, counteract Berlin and Paris, or get ready to fight China and so on. We are all very, very much aware that the war hasn't been won, right? And it's a massive factor when it comes to any kind of negotiations about becoming the accession into the EU, or our, of course, very deep motivation to become part of NATO, which is not on the table right now, right? So, well, realistically. Okay, so regarding the remarks about not readiness of Ukraine.
I'm sorry, but I have to object. I think that the country which is defending the European values on the real battlefield, giving the lives of its best men and women every day, paying this ultimate price, it's part of the EU by default. And the country which citizens are overwhelmingly supporting the membership in the EU, as of March, it's 85%, I guess, of Ukrainians, is a part of the EU by default. So, sure, we have to remember about our interests, and to be sure we defend them when negotiations start. But still, the readiness should be measured also taking into account these factors, the context we are living in. So I believe we are ready. If we take the those technical sides, I mean the 7 recommendations we have to fulfill in order to have a decision, hopefully by the end of this year, to start negotiations with the EU. Yeah, we have a lot of work to do, but what I came across the article by the former Prime Minister of Sweden, Carl Bildt. He mentioned about the champions in the accession process. As of now, these are 3 countries: Sweden, Finland, and Austria. They managed to complete the process of accession in 2 years, although having already the single market access at that moment, but still 2 years, the record. And actually he said that Ukraine is quite capable to do that as well. And the Prime Minister of Latvia, Mr. Kariņš, also confirmed this view. He said that if there is a country capable to beat this record, it surely is Ukraine. So I think that this is an optimistic view. and we should take it into account.
Thank you. Yeah, that's greatly optimistic. What we can do in 2 years, definitely we can transpose all legislation. If we stop debating and just put it in records. I'm not sure that it will help, though, to implement it really, to become a part of the institutional life. So 2 years, let it put it as like we have now the whole spectrum, starting from 2 years to 12 plus or 12 infinity. But frankly, then I was listening to colleagues, I have a feeling, I'm not sure that we are living in this sequential time, that we can first win the war, then we democratize, then we liberalize, then we reform. By the time we enter the next step, the whole world will be far away from us. I'm not sure that's very democratic, but it's definitely there. That's one thing. So life is complicated, and if I have several lessons learned from the war, and one of the maybe most striking lessons for me, or maybe the first lesson, is that life does not stop with the war. If you read all the literature, something was a wartime and a peacetime, and the wartime was only the war. That's wrong. I am living in Ukraine, and I have to confess that basically I continue living normal life. I continue worrying about deadlines, about new projects, about health, about education, about what to cook tomorrow. Basically, and it also goes to the reforms. Ukraine is not like going step by step. Ukraine is doing things in parallel. That's one thing. So, second, good news. Most of things you said, we did. Ukraine, we might discuss, we definitely are not, no, the judiciary is a part of democracy, and this part is not fully ready yet, although it's still not like, we have a basic judicial system, and now we are, in some parts, the society is learning, for example, with like anti-corruption court, which is now very active and getting more and more speed. But basically, in terms of elections, we are a very democratic country. Just before the war we completed, a couple of years before we completed decentralization, that changed strongly the organization of the country and fiscal structure of the country and decision-making in the country. And the part of the why the country is fighting also is because the people are much more, can decide much more on the ground. Ukraine is quite liberal, frankly. Ukraine trade is one of the very liberal. We will argue, apparently, and Ukraine is changing in terms of digital things. Ukraine is much more transparent than it was a lot before. Regulations. We are transposing EU regulations, which is not. It was not the dictate of the Brussels bureaucrats. Ukraine announced that it will transpose EU legislation slowly, but more than 2 decades ago. Actually, if we are talking to the decision, Ukraine choice, necessity, it's all, but it is on the currently now it is necessity because it's only guarantee of security together with NATO. But even without NATO, I bet that Russia would not attack if Ukraine be a member by then. Russia is never attacking strong. And if Ukraine learned something starting 2014, then Russia attacked and nobody dare, frankly, is that if you give up your nuclear power, the only way to be secure in this life, if you're Switzerland, probably it's not the only way. But if you are bordering something, the country with imperial ambitions or imperial past, the only way to be a a bit more protected, is to be a part of something larger. And we don't have a lot of choice here that you bluntly posed. We have Russia and we have EU. So it is not a choice of like, we are not sitting and thinking, what shall we do? We were sitting and thinking before 2014, we were sitting and thinking Ukraine was a neutral country, there was a lot of discussion about the third choice. Ukraine was trying to be a bridge to have a free trade with the EU, within association agreement, to have a free trade with CIS and Russia. Ukraine was debating for a long time the choice, but not anymore. And about all this, for example, the economic calculations and the impact. You correctly noted already that it's a lot of Ukrainians already there, here, in Warsaw and further west. Yes, somebody will further emigrate, then the war ends and the men can join their families. And some from people here will be able to return. I don't know what will be the balance, but a lot of things that we are worrying about have happened already. The world has changed and is changing dramatically. And is changing in terms of people, in terms of immigrants, in terms of technologies, in terms of the perceptions. And we have to adapt to this world. And Ukraine doesn't have any choice and doesn't have any time for wait for the membership. But I'm afraid that it is us who are feeling the pressure and necessity. And I'm not sure that it's fully comprehend in all 27 partners, despite their huge support, for which I am so much grateful.
So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Yes, Ukraine did not only just start fulfilling the requirements, so it's not a new thing. We've been working on this process for a while now. Also, when we're saying Ukraine needs to become more democratic, I think it starts a discussion on its own. Because we have a different point of view when it comes to that. Rule of law, for sure, is a very important part of being a democracy. I'm pretty sure you will agree with me that you have your own rule of law issues, but you wouldn't call your country not democratic. So let's be quite honest on this issue. Rule of law is a constant work in progress. You know, you don't just introduce it and then everything becomes better. You can take one step forward and 2 steps back. Well, hopefully, but you know, it's difficult. And it's very difficult to expect the system to go through this transition because you're expecting the system itself to reform itself, you know, to get rid of all of this all of the strings that are attached to not having an actual rule of law. And it's not only an anti-corruption system, right? It's vast. And we do understand that EU comes with strings attached. But for us, you know, joining the EU, a lot of it has to do with civilizational choice, right? We are coming up with a way in which to shout out louder, as loud as we can, that we are not a Russian proxy, right? That we are not a part of Russia, that we are as different from Russia as we can possibly be, right? And it means belonging to the Western world, right? How we imagine it. But there is an irony about talking about all of these EU deficiencies right now, when over the past short period, we are faced with the EU that chose free trade with Ukraine, probably prematurely and not very well prepared, but the EU as a structure chose the free trade with Ukraine after the full-scale invasion to help out our economy, with our ports being blocked and us not being able to export something extremely important, right? Wheat, that is supposed to be feeding hundreds of millions around the world. And then we have the experience of individual member states taking a step away from free trade. We are talking about banning Ukrainian imports, crucial imports that we rely heavily on, to have currency coming into the country. And then now we're talking about, or even not just import bans, but even on having Ukrainian produce travel through these countries on to their destination. Yes, the transit ban. So what's going on here?
One thing about the rule of law, because yes, we think about a lot and we discuss it, and more I think about it, it's not about system. It's more about the trust, like with everything. You don't need a complicated system. I mean, if everybody agrees whom we trust, you can have a witch. They will be sitting on the top of the hill and deciding. As long as everybody trusts her and everybody agrees with a final decision. It doesn't matter how complicated is the system when half of society doesn't trust the system. So the whole trick is to build consensus of whom we trust and how we build this. In Poland, we are unable to do it. However we change the system, half of the society won't trust them. So this is not about people who are running it. It is not about the system. It is like you have to start it again and discuss it and do it. So I think Ukraine, like with a lot of things, you are forced to discuss things and build the internal trust, and this is a good base for start. With agriculture, we did a horrendous mistake as a country, but it's partially...
Let's clarify which
yeah,
part
I'll
was the mistake.
I'm going to say it's just partially it's linked to, in general, the European Union. Poland is a huge grain producer, agriculture, one of the biggest in Europe, next to France. And the market is hugely controlled and regulated. And for Poland, for Polish farmers, it took years and years to adjust to those norms. And this is not very good system. I mean, it's very extensive. It's costly, so the produce are much more expensive food products in Europe than probably there will be anywhere else. We obviously love to talk about the value of our food, how healthy it is, how good, because we have the norms. The truth is, there's a lot of complicated system and regulation that make it costly to give a lot of employment to a lot of people that wouldn't have to work there if we will have more free market system of agriculture. So then comes Ukraine with much freer system of production that, and cheaper labor force, and you are able to produce the same goods cheaper.
You're welcome.
And for us, for consumers, it's probably good. And but the thing is that we are next to you, and we were the first country to be affected in it. And I think the problem of Poland was we were unable to build a sealed system of transit. We didn't have the system. We were unprepared. This is just talks about how short-sighted is whole Europe. That we are talking about Ukraine and joining us in the European Union, but we are not asking ourselves the question, what does it mean for Europe? What does it mean to the whole agriculture system? What does it mean for people moving back and forth? And it's not just Poland, but also other countries. And I would love to see how France would react with all the overflowing food. They are this is a very touchy issue. If you get your very good wines from Ukraine, which are very good, from Odessa region or Vinica, bring
Crimea.
to bring to hopefully bring to France, you see what's going to happen. So this has to change, and this is Poland should. And we do have a problem, and we discussed this internally in Poland, also Association of Small and Medium Employers, and with the branches, that our farmers should get together and rather cooperate with Ukrainian farmers and give them a know-how how to adjust to European norms, and give them know-how also how to process food. And that's something we could actually build on. Building process plants in Ukraine and working together. So the mistakes have been done, but it wouldn't happen if not for European Union rules. And this is something we call for, start talking about agriculture policy. I am a member of European Economic and Social Council, and we are trying to force European Union to start talking about it. Because in 2-3 years, this will be real big problem for whole Europe.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Tomek mentioned the agriculture, which is really costly area. It's consumed about 1/3 of the budget of European Union, only the agriculture. And when we are talking about the negotiation, we have about 33 negotiation area. So my question is, how many of this negotiation area you already closed? I believe that no one was closed still.
We did not start.
Okay.
We are talking, explain the import bans first.
So we have a 33 area of negotiation. Agriculture is only one of them. So we have so many other areas for contradictory interests of the countries. So then, for example, the opening the market of Ukraine for European products. You can.
It's done.
But you can imagine what it can mean for Ukrainian industry. It could finally, it could mean the collapse of a big part of industries.
No. So I'm very sorry, but let's not produce fakes, at least here. First, a free trade. It was not last year, I'm very sorry. Free trade, the agreement was a part of the association agreement, signed in 24, and full scale applied 2016, and basically EU market was open for Ukrainian products most entirely. Almost immediately, over 80% of their lives were opened. What we had tariff rate quotas, which was not a bans, no quantity restrictions, it was MFN duties, most favored nation, WU level duties applied for products over the level. But basically for many products that we are now debating the closure, they were duty-free for quite a long time. For example, the same corn, maize, which is the largest grain imported by Poland, not wheat. It has zero duty in EU for a very long time. But that's just
okay.
one. And about Ukrainian industry, can I have? But because Ukraine, you will have a further discussion. But Ukraine, the structure of industry changed dramatically, exactly because Ukraine opened for competition for many years. Not only for European competition. Ukrainian EU duties can enter Ukraine duty-free, and with the same technical regulations, and actually we are adopting the same food standards as EU applies, and using them for quite a long number of years. There is not so huge barriers, and for European Union they are much smaller than for other countries, to enter the EU market. I'm very sorry, it will not be another huge inflow of industrial products. Everybody who wanted, they entered. And one more, Ukraine knows how to produce food products.
Okay, please understand. I am not against the Ukraine in this situation. I really, in a long term, I really consider the Ukraine as a very precious ally of Poland and as well the Romania or the countries from our region, especially in shifting the interest of European Union from the current position into more to the east. Of course, in some short-term strategies, we are the competitors. no doubtly in agriculture, in industry as well. If Ukraine will join the EU, you will be the biggest recipient of structural funds, which Poland is right now. Yeah. So
I would like to add something.
Wait.
Because if you have structural funds, it goes mostly to the regions which are not developed, yes? If you look at Poland, in the last 20 years, only Warsaw, only one town, is 100% of average GDP per capita in European Union. And all countries of new European Union, like Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, they will lose the most of accession of Ukraine to European Union.
Yes. Romania, please.
We understand your passion and we understand your frustration because 20 years ago it was the same frustration in Romania when somebody from Brussels came to us and told us that we are not ready. But
no, right now we're not talking about that. We're talking about something different.
You spoke earlier about the judicial system. Let's imagine a judicial system. It's like a building. It's like a big, beautiful building. You need a few earthquakes to really know that that building is strong. And in Romania, we thought 20 years ago that our justice is okay. It was not. After that, we had a former prime minister who went to jail, a socialist, of course. We had many members of the parliament, many members of the government who went to jail. And then we understand how a system of justice should work. Now, unfortunately, the same politicians bought the magistrates with big salary, big pensions. I think are the biggest pensions in the European Union compared with the rest of the society. And now we no longer have a strong, independent judicial system. And that is a lesson, that there are some institutions that you have to fight for them every day. Because sometimes you may lose, you may win, but the win is never forever. But the last could be forever. And that's why people from Brussels, from Warsaw, from Bucharest, wants to see those institutions working many years and having to take difficult decisions. Our colleague talked about 34 chapters to negotiate with the European Union.
Yes, I know about that very well.
I remember those times in Romania, and I repeat, it was a great frustration because we had, I think, the border security and the judicial system. Those were the last one, and we were sure that our border security is fine. We were sure that our judicial system is fine, but we were wrong.
I would like to add.
But it is important.
As a moderator, I'm going to use my right to interject without muting the microphone. We are returning back to where we started from, right? That we heard you, Ukraine is not ready, but we heard you also that your countries were not ready, and it didn't stop your accession process. That's one thing, right? So let's not judge if we don't want to be judged. One thing. Second thing, competition is not a bad thing. I don't think I should be pointing that out in our audience, including agricultural competition. There will be tough competition because Ukraine is a major exporter, right? So we need to be figuring out how we can make this competition sustainable and how we can make free trade work, right? And not just point to Brussels for the faulty procedures, right? Right now, we are talking about the negotiating with separate member states and trying to find a solution that works for them, right? So there won't be more blame game going on. We just need to figure this out. And Ukraine is definitely not only agriculture. And there will be, like it was pointed out, there will be more Ukrainians moving in after the war is over. I understand that it's difficult to imagine because already a lot of Ukrainians moved in, but we do have a travel ban, which is mostly observed, and it is keeping a lot of people back in the country. And we will have a lot more issues rising out of this, and it's not only competition, it's not only more immigration, but it's also having to deal with the aftermath of war. And the position that you are speaking from right here is, from our perspective, I will generalize a little bit, is a little bit spoiled because it's a known fact that the EU has more to offer to countries that are less developed. Than when they join in, you know, they speed up their development, and of course they reach the stage at which they understand that they are having, you know, more problems. They are having their issues with the European Union. We're not there yet, right? So before we move on, what are we looking to get from the EU as part of the EU?
Just as a comment, if I may, to the latest discussion. The issue of the import ban, the recent issue, has shown that Ukraine is competitive, and we will have challenges the EU will have challenges in accepting Ukraine. And there'll be lots of shifts within the EU. There'll be, like in any such situation, losers and winners. But although we will have those challenges, we have to realize that the gains the European Union will have from Ukraine's membership outweigh the challenges we will have. So,
what about our gains?
Our gains. Ukraine's main gain will be, I would say, I would form it in two groups, and I think that I'm sure I will not be original. The first gains are ideological. Ukraine will finally be a part of a prestigious club of countries with shared values of liberalism, of humanism, of the club of very strong economies and stable political systems. So this is a matter of ideology, value, image. And the second group of gains, these are pragmatic ones. I mean, surely the membership will open tremendous opportunities for the economy, for our economy, for the boost of a Ukrainian economy, for the well-being of Ukrainians, the flourishing of the country. So I guess, but the main goal, the main gain, the main benefit will be the security and stability we will get. Recently there was a discussion in Warsaw about the Ukraine's future membership in NATO, and the main idea was that the gray zone, which was due to the gray zone in which Ukraine was all this time, galvanized the Russian aggression. And I guess this could be, this is very alike with the European Union. If we are left in this gray zone, this will only unleash this instability. So the main gain, the main benefit for Ukraine will be stability, political stability, strong economic status, and prosperity in the future.
Thank you. I will start probably from money, because it's what probably you expect me to say. And if we were discussing that 2 years ago, before the war, definitely I would say yes, structural funds is the thing that Ukraine expects to get as a member, and the money before accession. But currently with the war, with the need to rebuild country, these international commitments and European Union commitments to provide money for reconstruction and rebuilding, I'm not sure that we will address that using structural funds. There will be absolutely other money, which are larger, basically, than structural funds, because needs are not like prolonged. Needs are here now, and there will be a whole big debate in the next session about that. So, frankly, I'm not sure that Ukraine, if the reconstruction and rebuilding is successful, will need structural funds, or will need as much structural funds as we expect now. We'll see. I'm not doing these calculations. My colleagues are not here, but money will come just because of the war, and a great way if it's not EU paying, if Russia will eventually pay, but I will not see that now guaranteed. But that's even further discussion. What else Ukraine gets? I fully agree there's security. That's the reason. That's why I said that it's now not a dream, not a choice, it's a need, the need. Second, it's probably predictability. Despite all the issues with like Brussels regulation, etc., at least it's a regulation that it is known for many countries, big economies. It's regulation that is known for many partners outside the world, that is understandable and clear and predictable. Because if you are from business, you should know more, but as far as I understand, it's not the issue that, it is of course a good issue to know that it's 10% tax or it's a 25% tax. But if you know that it is a tax that is here and it will stay here, it's much better than you just don't know what to pay at all. So it's security, it's predictability and known, something that's known and familiar for many. Yes, it's economic opportunities and well-being. But frankly, it was surprisingly for me, but for me, EU is a freedom. Authorities, you would say, no, it's no freedom, it's a bureaucracy. But still, it's a freedom. It's at least not for the whole world, but just for Europe. But it's a freedom to move, a freedom to enterprise, freedom to get education wherever you want. It's much more freedom in the world that is getting much more restricted and autocratic.
Have you seen Fit for 55, maybe?
What?
Fit for 55, the new European Union regulation.
Maybe, I don't know the number, if you say about what it is.
This is regulation about the environment, with totally about the climate changes.
Oh yeah, it will be very tight.
So you will pay even tax for your house, really?
Most likely, yes.
Okay, I can tell you. Well, I can agree with all your statement, but as I mentioned before, we as a Slavic nations, we are very emotional. So you played on emotions. So from emotional point of view, you are fully right. You have right to be a member of Western world. It's because of your suffering, because of wars, because what the Russians are doing right now, exactly right now in Ukraine. But the European Union you mentioned, you want to join, it's not exist anymore. It's a completely different situation.
Why are you still part of it?
And completely different environment.
That's a valid question. Why are you still part of it?
It's a great question. It's a great question. But still, as an emotional nation, it's in Poland you cannot even ask this question. If it's worth you, from the economical point of view, we should be there or not, because 2 years ago or 3 years ago, two professors prepared such a calculation. It's really after this 16 or 15 years of being the member, it's still the costs are rising, or it's still we are on a plus or minus. But there is no discussion. They are accused of being anti-Europeans and anti-everything, and nobody wants to discuss with them on this topic. So,
well, let's structure it in this way, right? So this is a free speech area, right? And this is the topic that needs to be seriously discussed. So if you are evaluating your member states, you are evaluating you being a member of the EU, right? That you're not super happy with, but if you compare your gains with the restrictions, with the losses, are you up or down?
I can tell that still we are on a plus side.
Little bit.
But I think that the costs are rising. When we look for this Fit for 55 or some other ideas which arise in Brussels and in this bureaucracy, the costs are rising. Still, it's a good idea, and also from this geopolitical point of view, that we are the part of, but the costs are rising. So I think it's a good idea sometimes to ask the question. Sometimes, if we still, we should stay there, or maybe think about some other solution. Another question, of course, is if we have any other solutions. That's true.
You identified only two options,
That's true.
Right?
So that's a really huge problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think there's no choice for Poland. I mean, because of our past and our history. The thing is, the European Union is a part of big compromise, a lot of states, and the truth is that Poland, when we look at the wealth of both, we measure in Warsaw Enterprise Institute how fast Poland is approaching the leader of European Union, of Europe, for the last 500 years, and the leader now is Germany, used to be England, France, and we've never been so close. So there's no question. I mean, we are closer to Europe, to Western Europe, than ever in our history. So we've never been so rich, so affluent, so well off. Okay, and our business is prosperous and doing very well. So there's no discussion, because some people are obviously, we don't like regulations, but this is overall problem, and that's why I'm talking why Ukraine would be great with joining European Union, because European Union is burnout. We are using a lot of regulations as a protective measures. When you look DSA, DMA, a lot of regulations about the internet, the big cyber platforms. Now the bitcoins, and now artificial intelligence. So the main goal of European Union is how to protect their own citizen jobs from stronger competition coming from the US or China. So all of those regulations are very protective. So at the end, European Union, it's developing much slower, it's less competitive, and but we got this feeling in Europe that we are well off, that they are still having jobs, our companies still produce, even though we are lagging behind. So this is the one problem. So with approachment of Ukraine, we'll have to change everything in European Union. We'll have to change the regulations about movement of people, how we organize labor market. We'll have to go back and never use the free market of services. Do you know that European Union still we don't have a free services agreement?
Yes.
And now 2/3 of European economy is services. So only 1/3 is a free economy. So when you look at the states and you compare Alaska with Texas, so they have a more trade than some of our countries in the European Union. So we have Alaska with Texas has more trade than we have it with France. So why we don't have Amazon, European Amazon? Why we don't have a Facebook? Why we don't have a big financial institutions like the US has or China? Because our market is stringent. It's still very regulated and very protective. With Ukraine coming to Europe, we'll have to change all of it, not just agriculture, financial sector. And this is something I really hope will happen. Otherwise, Europe will die without Ukraine. So that's what I am saying. For Poland, it's important for whole Europe. I mean, you can't have this old agricultural system in Europe with Ukraine joining up. It would be just so funny. I mean, this will just all burst.
From day to day, of course.
So
It will burst too late.
But my problem is that nobody does that in Commission right now. Nobody sits down and say, okay, this will happen. In 5, 10 years, Ukraine will be here. So how we prepare? Nobody does that because the bureaucrats are doing what they always do, protecting their job. They have to come up and say, we have to revolutionize that. We have to completely change our agriculture. We have to change our financial sectors. We have to change it. I talked to some people in Polish financial system, and I say, why don't we use the opportunity we have to create with Ukraine joint financial system. So Ukraine at least be already in Europe, but for us it will be open big market, like a BLIK we're using in Europe, in Poland. We could actually, we sold it to Romania. We could actually do it in Ukraine. So Ukraine will be already in financial market, European financial market. Regulations, we can't do that.
Okay, got it. George?
Okay, from a Romanian perspective, and I also think that it is a Polish perspective also, we need to rebalance the European Union. Because something bad happened a few years ago when Great Britain left the European Union. Because in London, we see that realism that I was talking about earlier. And we can see that in the last years, the most important decisions were taken in Berlin and in Paris, of course. But I think that if Ukraine will join the European Union, perhaps imagine Kiev, Warsaw, and Bucharest standing together. And perhaps we will not have things like Fit 55 that is destroying our economy, because it's true. Today, we are changing our dependency to Russian and oil gas to the dependency of the Chinese battery. That is a fact. And remember...
Ukraine has lithium.
Yeah, and remember that not too many years ago, Angela Merkel was defending her special relations with Russia, and there was almost nobody there to say no. During Romanian presidency of the European Union, we blocked the construction of Nord Stream 2. And you remember, I think it was in 2019, but 2 years later, they continue and they finish it. But perhaps with Kiev in the European Union, with Kiev alongside Romanians and Polish people, and let's remember the Baltics. They are not here with us, but they are in our hearts.
Well, let's ask Kiev.
We will rebalance the things in the European Union. And one more thing, I think that Ukraine, it is very important to join the Bucharest 9 format in the future, or it is an old Polish-Romanian idea called the Intermarium. The idea has already 100 years. And I think this, it was Marshal Pilsudski and the Romanian politician Tache Ionescu who came with this idea in 1921, 1922, something like that. And I think that if you will build this special partnership here in the East, it will not matter if Germany and Russia at some time will consider to shake hands again. Because together we will be very strong.
So Ukraine. Is Ukraine up for the task? Hypothetical. Do we want to get involved in this fight?
fight with Belgium, with Berlin, and yeah. I feel that Ukraine is in already, whatever we are part or not. Basically, actually, it returns to the discussion we had. Frankly, for me, it's easier to imagine economic integration and economic pressures than the political integration and the membership, exactly because of the voting, distribution of votes, and veto powers. And these are the issues that are on the table much more than any economic pressures. And that will make the whole accession much more difficult. On the other hand, it's great that Poland and Romania and many other countries are here with Ukraine and are ready like to promote this rebalancing of things. But what I learned from the past, at least what I learned from colleagues, because I did not study that myself, that actually EU is first accepting new members and then it realizes that it cannot stand with current policies with the new members, and then it starts to change. So the sooner Ukraine becomes a member, the faster EU will be more dynamic and probably less protective. Although disregarding all my liberalism, I'm not sure how to withstand the climate change pressure, this dynamism of the world. But this is just another discussion. Summing up, I think that first, Ukraine was a lot to discuss that. Do you know the chapters? Yes, I do know the chapters. Moreover, I can comment on what happened with many chapters because I'm following that for years, not as a part of the accession, only last year as an accession. I have participated in filling in questionnaires in the first wave and now responding to the questions to the first accession report. So Ukraine is not as unprepared as you think. Ukraine has a lot to do, but still has a lot done. But I think that it should be non-bureaucratic, but more political decision, because I strongly sure that with Ukraine in, EU has dynamism. With Ukraine out, with Ukraine standing at the door, intermarium might be, but we are too competitive within us, so it will be only political, which might not stand up. But basically, if Ukraine and other countries are waiting, I'm not sure what Turkey will see with elections, but if the Ukraine and many countries are waiting too long, EU will just not survive the modern pressures, because it's not only competition good, you're right, we are about services. But frankly, we are not even about services. We are about digital, which is not exactly the services. It's like, I think it's, in 10 years we will talk about that as about another, like, freedom. It's not freedom of goods. We have four freedoms. It's a fifth, freedom or unfreedom, or how to form it. And we have so many things to move and decide together about Europe. So I think that it should not be if Ukraine joins. It should be our unanimous when Ukraine joins. And how we can jointly do that happens earlier.
So to move closer to summing up the discussion and maybe receiving some questions from the audience, Olena, when Ukraine joins the EU, Ukraine's role in the EU.
But may I just add a bit? I'm very happy to hear from George and from Łukasz at last some flagging some positive things about Ukraine's membership. Indeed, due to Ukraine's size, its size will give us a large number of members of the parliament and the significant voting power. So why not build another alliance within the EU? Why not? with Poles, with Central European countries. And Łukasz, I think that you take things for granted. I prepared for this roundtable for a while, and I found the analysis dedicated to the 15th anniversary of Poland's membership in the EU, and it characterized the time, these 15 years, as an unprecedented civilizational leap. So I think that's quite a fair thing. As we see it from Ukraine, you take many things for granted. Or maybe we are naive.
Well, if we're talking about being naive, right, we can also say that it's probably a little bit naive to expect that Ukraine joining the EU will fix the EU, right? Because once again, it will be a process, it will be a fight, and like you said, Brussels is not very willing to change itself. Once again, we're talking about the same, circle of life, but it will certainly shake things up, and Ukraine is, over our even recent history, we see that Ukraine and Ukrainians are quite outspoken, even when they're not asked questions and their opinions. So I understand your position that things can't be worse, right? But this shakeup will need adjustments. Will need adjustments not only from Ukraine or Brussels. It will need adjustments from member states as well.
I think this discussion prepared you for the time in the future when you will be in the European Union. Because you have to understand that being in European Union is not about having some partners. It's also about being in a competition with those partners.
Yeah, make sure you guys
that's the European Union.
That
yeah,
too.
And perhaps it should be more competition.
More competition, sure. The more the merrier, right? So
but
I think
fair competition, first of all. Fair competition. Sorry to interrupt you, but if you look at Poland 2005, 2007, you will see that the trade balance went down. Everywhere where country joined European Union, trade balance goes down. What else? Big companies from EU, they have access to cheap money. They have euro and they can take very, very cheap loans. So they have a lot of money to invest. Yes, that's the fact. When you have country like Ukraine after war, and some big investor would like to join, of course it will grow like 5 to 10 companies near, for example, one factory. But what it can happen on base of Poland? Poland is fourth on the end by technology. We don't have high developed technologies. So please don't do our mistake. Because what we have now, we do only production, we have warehouses, and we are cheap outsourcing for West countries. You cannot be this kind of outsourcing. I know that you did a lot of in last 2 years because, for example, you have Dia City. This is like IT area on the north of Kyiv, yes? So what is my advice? Don't do our mistakes. Don't be a country without your own technology. Thank you.
thank you. Huge thank you to the speakers, but I think we're ready for the questions, for more questions, and possibly even harder questions. So, yeah, just...
I think that there was many topics here, so it is very difficult to ask a very precise question.
But we'll try.
But I will try, you know, and especially that you are so different in terms of opinions that it is difficult to ask a general question to every one of you. But maybe my first question is, what would happen if Poland would not accede to EU? And it is a rhetoric question, yes. Because if I think about 1981, we had also tanks on the streets. We didn't have war, fortunately, but we had tanks on the streets. Who would think about this, that in 89 we would be a more or less, but however more than less free country, and that in 2004 we will join EU?
Okay, let's give it a try. So.
Okay, I will try to answer this question. It's not
maybe one more question concerning when I am listening to some of people talking here, I see that we are trying to advise to Ukrainian people and to Ukraine in which alliances they should come, are they ready or not to enter to the European Union?
And the question?
And the question is, do we really have the right to say, are they ready or not? Do we have the knowledge?
Wonderful question.
To answer this? And are we really in the position to say them in which alliances and with whom they should enter when they will join European Union?
Okay, I will try to be as quick as possible. Yeah. So it's in 2004 when Poland joined EU, it was not a question being in or being out, but more it was a question about the conditions. And right now we consider that the European Union changed a lot comparing to 2004. We can consider this a different organization. And if you are talking about the readiness of Ukraine or not readiness and our right to talk about that, yes, of course, we are the members, so we have the right. And they are still not the members.
About being members, but they are the members, so they get to vote.
They are not the members, so that's our right to discuss with them. And of course, as I mentioned, Ukraine being the member of European Union will be our very precious ally in all the alliances and discussions.
But I would like to point out that we are the ones asking the question, right? We wanted to hear the opinion, so it's not like it wasn't unasked for. Okay, so maybe one more question.
Well, I can do it without the microphone. It's very short. No, because it's transmitted online. So okay, perfect. Well, we already heard that one of the sources of resistance to a quick membership of the Ukraine was the loss of structural funds for some country. And it seems to me that this is related to what Milton Friedman brought up with you can't have a welfare state and free migration at the same time. This is why I want you to ask, would you be willing to accept the abolishment of the loss of structural funds or of structural funds in exchange for a quicker membership possibility?
That was the answer, well, yes. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, Poland gained much more from the free market, for open market, than we get from structural funds. It's unproportionately more. The thing is that the money we were getting was pretty much kind of sweetener for people who are not catching up. For small cities, for province, for farmers. But at the end, actually, this is a very good question, because the farmers are the ones who made a biggest gain in Poland. I mean, if you compare where Polish farms and people living in the farms were in 1990s and where they are now, it's like a different world. I mean, if you think Warsaw developed, it's nothing compared to small towns and countryside. And it's not because of the structural funds. This is thanks to incredible production and restructuring, internal and anything. So I think this is a political thing, because I think structural funds are needed for political reasons, for politicians to keep winning elections, because a lot of people are not catching up. Because a lot of people during transition time, they have no place to live, they can't afford new houses. We had a problem, for example, with those communist co-ops. overnight people lost place to live and job. There were like thousands of people didn't have a job. So, and some of them were given help, government aid. And funny thing is, those who didn't actually succeeded much better. So we don't need it, but this is a political fund. And you see in Ukraine, this will be very needed for political purpose.
And
Okay, I think we're finished, or one more? One more.
well,
Okay.
one more.
One more, just one more, because we were...
Hello. So just want to ask you, like, okay, we have discussing Ukraine, EU, but I think we have to touch on America's role on here, and I think there was a very interesting point on that when President Macron dared to say that they would not help the Americans with Taiwan, they said, okay, and what if we leave you? What if we don't help you anymore in Ukraine? Why would we let you defend them? Can you do it? And he reminded that they could. France, for example, to fight they needed to fight some rebels in Africa. They could not travel the soldiers. They had to use all American equipment. So I said, what would you do that for? And especially coming that now they're claiming that China will be ready to fight this war in 2025. That is 2 years. And there is the possibility that war will go on. If it goes on, and then Macron again says, okay, we will not help you, make a deal with the Germans, as always. And they say, okay, we will not send troops. The Americans will say, okay, Europeans defend Ukraine on your own. And that could be like a complicated scenario. That's just to show that, okay, we say Europe, 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 but we forgot that America has a big say in this continent.
No, we wouldn't dare to forget America.
Thanks.
But we don't really see neither the US nor the EU or EU countries bringing their troops into Ukraine to defend Ukraine. So I'm not sure if we should be talking about that kind of thing, about telling the EU to defend Ukraine, because from our standpoint, Ukraine is pretty much defending Poland and some other European countries because of Ukraine being a buffer state. Ukraine was relegated to this position for very many years, and one of the reasons was to appease Russia, and everyone knew that that was going on. So,
I will be very short. I think that this war reminded us what the first Secretary General of NATO said. It was a British, Lord Ismay. He said, keep the Americans in, the Russians out, and the Germans down. And I think that
multitasking.
but it's not hard. And we're going to do that together. I think that this war showed that who is really willing to help and to defend democracy. And are the same countries that saved us in the World War I, are the same countries that saved half of Europe in World War II, and are the same countries that won the Cold War for us, Great Britain and United States of America. Those are the countries.
Well, one thing also pointing out what you said, I mean, every country is defending themselves. I mean, Ukraine, first of all, fighting for their own freedom and their own people. And Poland and all the other countries are helping Ukraine because they also, it's wise for them because they will defend them from Russia. And so it's very cynical, but it's like Poland is not helping Ukraine just for strictly altruistic reasons. I mean, this is also because we're defending our own borders in the future.
But we know that self-interest is probably the main driver of progress, right?
And Ukraine is doing that for self-interest as well. I mean,
self-preservation.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a bit different.
Yeah. So this is, everybody does for themselves, and this is the same thing will be in European Union. Every country does it for themselves. More European politicians are talking about multicultural. We are one nation. There are no differences. There are more differences and more struggle. So look at about what's happening with migration in the European Union. Everybody fights everybody. Hungarians, Austrians, France, Italians, Germans with Danish. Everybody is trying to push out migrants all over Europe. There's like no agreement. And there's no even trying to build some consensus in it. So European Union is a platform we are in, and we are defending ourselves from other evils. This is the question is how we define them, because France are defining them differently, and we are defining them differently. For us, it's Russia. For France, in America.
I have to interrupt your very heated debates because we have other plans also for tonight. Now there is a plan for a short break if any one of you want to order something by the bar or to have